Hello, and welcome to the channel. I'm Stetson,
Hi, Megan.
and this is Along for the Ride.
Can you hear the night calling?
Well guys, thanks for watching the video. If you've made it through all three parts of the video, I hope you stuck around and watched all three. Coming into the end of this series here, we kind of wanted to hit on a few things, what we learned from the Rimrocker, what we did right, what we did wrong. This was our first multi-day off-road experience, I guess you'd say. We've both grown up camping off-road and that type of stuff, but not so much in a Jeep that far from home. So we just have, a few things that we want to talk about. Meg's going to tell the story of when we almost died on this trip. We didn't actually get hurt, but we thought we were going to die. And then we'll hit on a few things, different terrain, things that I never came across in my research of the Rimrocker. And hopefully we can get a few points out there to help some different people and stuff. Whoever wants to go try this, hopefully get a few more things out there on the interwebs about the Rimrocker, and so whoever goes out there again can be a little bit better prepared than we were. Overall, it was a good trip. We only really had one bad experience, and Meg, go ahead and tell the story about what happened to us that night.
Okay, so there's a couple pictures on day 2 towards the end. You'll see we start getting into some rain and the trails are getting muddy and stuff. So we filmed going through the mud and stuff. And then after the one video, there's a picture of our Jeep covered in clay, mud, whatever. And that was after I had gone through and scraped it off. So it was even worse than the picture shows. So we were going along fine. It had just downpoured. It was wet, as you'll see.
And we never actually got into the rain that
No.
day. We followed it all day long. So we never actually got rained on.
No. So, but I feel like we were a little bit closer to the storm at this point. So there's a jaunt in the trail that we had to take a pretty sharp turn. And that's where you get out on this rim. And it turned to the gray clay. And we were fine because we had plenty of land on each side of the road, so we were fine. But then all of a sudden it just went to like cliff, and we were going along. It was scary. The back end just kept wanting to go off the trail,
Which is off the cliff, and die.
Yeah. So, and the road, where it had come down and flooded, there was no going into the
bank,
the
upper bank, uphill side.
Next to the mountain. There was nothing being able to keep us in a safe place. So we got out there far enough, it was downhill and there was little dips and stuff where it just came up so fast that we weren't able to stop. We weren't able to turn around. We weren't able to back up because it just kept trying to pull us off, our back end just kept going. And I was scared. I didn't film any of it. I was scared. I was hanging on. I didn't get any footage. But I trusted Stetson, and I kept saying little prayers okay, let us get across this next little part. Let us get across this next little part, and we just did. And we were on there long enough where he finally stopped, got out of the vehicle. We stopped in a safe place. As safe as it could be, and he got out to look to see how far we had to go. And he was like sliding, walking. Like it was not a good situation, and it turned so quickly. So he got in and he's just like, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, let's just keep going little by little. And we did, and it was scary. And we finally were able to pull off, get some land in between us and the cliff. So we made it. And he gets out of the Jeep, goes over, and like he just needed to vent and kind of shake things off. And he comes back and he's like, I'm just shaking. And at that point I was like, you weren't in control? And he's like, well, I've kind of driven through this with like previous work history, but like no. Like that was really scary, and I just started bawling. It was so scary to find out that like he wasn't actually in control as I thought he was. But we did a good job. We took as much precaution as we could, and then we were able to go and find a safe camp spot for the night.
Which turned out awesome. The camp spot we came across was totally cool.
Yeah.
We were back enough from the rim of the canyon where it was safe, but close enough we could take a short walk, and the view was looking down into the Paradox Valley, I think it was called. And it was an amazing view. It was a super cool campsite, so it turned out okay from a bad situation. But moving into, some of the topics we want to hit about what we learned from that. Topic one is flash flooding. I normally don't look at the weather too much when it comes to my vacations. We both work full time. When we get a week off, we take the week. It doesn't matter what the weather does. We've scheduled it, we go. This is one of those things that check the weather. If it's going to rain, I would say don't do it. The stretch on day 2 from really about Nucla to Buckeye is horrible in the rain. It's straight clay. You are on the rim the whole time, it's a cool view, really awesome if it's not raining or wet. And so I would say that's one thing I wish I would have done is known a little bit more about the terrain and the weather. It's very clay-based dirt out there, which is very, very slick when it rains. With all those canyons and ravines, the flash flooding is a big issue. You got to pay attention to that. In one of the clips, I believe on the day 2 video, we hit a water spot in the trail that didn't look more than maybe 6 to 8 inches deep, and you saw it was like up over the hood of the Jeep, which caught both of us off guard. So flash flooding is an issue. The mud, the clay is a problem. Be aware of that going into this trip. So good tires. Definitely make sure that you've got good tires. All terrains. If it's dry, I'd say all terrains would be okay. It's pretty like a shale rock base in a lot of the areas. But from that Nucla really to Buckeye, it's mud. There's clay, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. Anything else to add on the clay part of it, mud part? Another thing is maybe to touch on the terrain of this area. Again, if it's dry, no problems. You're not going to have any issues. We went in the end of July, and on a normal water year, there may still be some water in the river crossings. But this year it's been so dry, and everywhere really in the western U.S. is in a drought. There was no water in the water crossings. And in my opinion, that's about the only spot you would need higher clearance for. There's some rocky sections, but I would say if you can run like a 30-ish inch tire, 33, you'll clear everything. A stock half-ton truck will do this trail no problem. And we've seen plenty of weird vehicles that you wouldn't expect to be doing a Jeep trail out there doing it. And they did it just fine.
I don't know how many Jeeps we saw. Maybe one?
Yeah, there weren't actually very many Jeeps, which was surprising.
There was more Forerunners and trucks.
And that leads into the next thing, going out there with all the videos on YouTube about the Rimrocker Trail, I thought, if we have problems, somebody will come along. If we get stuck, somebody will be out there. And you are by yourself. From really the time we left Columbine Campground, you pass a few locals coming down because we went in on the weekend. But from there on, we passed one other vehicle, and that was it. And that's 70 miles worth of trail to pass one vehicle. So you're on your own. You have to be prepared for anything that happens out there. You have to be able to handle it yourself, which kind of surprised me. I really thought there would be a lot more people kind of wandering around out there, and there's really not in that day 2 section. Now, the closer you get to Moab and the closer you are to Montrose, there was a few, but still not as many as I really expected to see on this trail.
The 2 things that we're definitely going to invest in is maybe a set of chains. I think that would have helped greatly in that situation where we were by ourselves. And then obviously a winch.
Yes. Which the winch
planned
was
on it, but we
list,
didn't get it in time, and we didn't expect that we would need it based off of what we've watched.
And again, dry weather, you don't. You will never need a winch. You'll never need to click lockers in. Honestly, I wasn't in 4-wheel drive for like 95% of this trail. There were a couple of spots that it wasn't muddy that I put it in just for a little peace of mind, but you didn't need it. So if the trail is dry, it's super easy and it's super nice, really pretty up there, but just be prepared for the weather to change because it will, and it happens fast when it does. And on that note, temperatures. Just because you're thinking, well, we're headed for Moab stays fairly warm year round, we'll be fine. Not so much. If it's raining, it's cold. On the first night, I just took a small, fleece sleeping bag and a blanket. I got cold. So be prepared for the weather. Rain gear, hoodies, coats, nice sleeping gear, and waterproof tents and canopies. I made sure and waterproofed both the tent. I didn't do the canopy. I did the tent and the rain fly before we took off. Canopy turned out was waterproof, so that was nice. And the tent leaked a little bit on night 1, but it was a freaking downpour all night long on night 1. And so I think we come out pretty good for what we were not prepared for there. Another thing, I'm just looking at my list here. Take backup maps and GPS stuff. I'm not a tech savvy guy. My videos probably reflect that. Very basic stuff. I bought an iPad because I thought, man, that'll be really cool. Bigger screen, I can see the GPS better. If you don't buy this, a iPad you can put on a cellular network, it can't find your location. Didn't know that going into it. I figured it was like a phone where, it had the GPS all the time. Not so much. They will still work. We've used, with my job that I've used them before. With the computer laptop setup, you can buy, Garmin makes a little Bluetooth GPS unit, and there's other companies that make them besides Garmin too, but Garmin's the one I've used the most. You just Bluetooth it to the iPad to the GPS unit, and then you're good to go. Didn't know that going into this. So that's another thing on the list of things we need to get. We were okay because I had my phone with backup maps. I had multiple apps. The one I use the most is Trails Off-Road. Freaking awesome app. I would definitely recommend that to anybody. Worked very well the entire time we were on the trail. Backups I had were Gaia and Onyx Hunt version. They do make an off-road version, but I already had the hunt, so I don't pay for the off-road stuff. And then we had paper maps as well, which I'm old school. I like a paper map. It's nice because they have the paper map. If you pick it up from the Montrose Visitor Center, is super super cool. It works really well. Super detailed map. It actually has a lot of like, if you want to take more than say 3 days to do the trail, there's a lot of separate loops you can take and make. Cool map, really cool map. Let's see what else here. Oh, our gear setup. So I watched a bunch of videos. Trail Recon's one I follow quite closely, and then just kind of really just Googled, overlander gear setups for this trip. We had a lot of camping gear before because, like I said, we're into hunting and outdoor stuff, so we had a lot of it. But I decided to go ahead and buy one of the 12-volt fridge setups. I bought a rough country version. They have an LG compressor in that, so I was fairly confident in the components. I think I paid like $3.99 for it, and it's a 45 liter, which is a pretty middle of the road price for those fridges. And I would recommend buying one of those to anybody that's considering it. It was so nice to spend, what was it, 3 days, 4 days with that thing. It pulls very little juice. I bought the Jackery 500 watt battery pack, and it used, I think it was like right around 15 to 20% of that battery's capacity in a night. So I mean, we're talking, you can go 4 days on a battery pack that's the size of your lawnmower battery. I mean, it's pretty small. Really awesome. Didn't have to have any ice. Didn't have to worry about water and coolers, and it was super nice. I will definitely recommend anybody that's looking at buying one of those, just spend the money. They're expensive, but they're worth it in the end, just for convenience sake. For this trip, I didn't want to spend a crap ton of money on camp gear to get into it and go, you know what, this isn't for us. So didn't do the rooftop tent, didn't do the roof rack. That was just money I didn't feel like I wanted to spend for this trip. We did, however, buy one of the tents. It's the quick setups. You just pull it up. It's kind of like an easy up type shelter, but it's a tent. Would recommend that if you're gonna do the ground setups. There's a bunch of different companies that make them. I'm not even gonna go into brands and pricing. Google them, look them up on Amazon. There's tons of the quick setup type tents. Way nicer than the old school dome tents, because you don't have to fight poles and stuff. We took an easy up canopy with us. I would definitely recommend that. It works well as a canopy and as a extra rain fly for the tent when you're stuck in a downpour in Colorado. So I would definitely recommend taking that. We did some lightweight backpacking type chairs, tables. We did cots to sleep on, and it worked good. The one downside, I think, to our setup is it was heavy. The Jeep was squatted pretty bad in the rear, so if that's something you're worried about, maybe look into some lighter weight stuff than what I did. Going forward, we found out we liked it, so we're going to continue to do these videos and trips like this. Going to be doing a roof rack, rooftop tent, and I actually just bought the vehicle awning before I bought the roof rack, so I can't even put it on the Jeep, but I have the awning. So yeah, gear setup, and then just prepare for anything. That's the main thing I've always learned over the years. I've spent a lot of time a long ways away from people to where you have to rely on your gear and your setup. If something goes wrong, have the gear for it. We had a toolkit with us. We had zip ties. We had a fire extinguisher. We had all sorts of different stuff. We were totally prepared for anything that, well, not quite anything, because the mud, we were not quite ready for that, but pretty much anything I could possibly think of that would go wrong, we had the stuff to be able to handle that on the trail. So spend some time, research what you think you need, and take it with you. It's super better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. So take the extra weight, take the extra stuff, if you have it and don't need it, it's way better than needing it and not having it. And
we were prepared to like stay an extra day if we needed to. Where after that really bad night, we didn't know what was ahead of us really. I hadn't watched any videos, and he wasn't really sure of the terrain. But we had service long enough to where like we could send out a message to our families letting them know like, hey, we'd be an extra day, but we're good. But we had food, we had everything extra just in case we needed to do that. So.
And that's the other thing. You have 0 cell service out there. We picked it up in the one spot, and that was pretty much it. So you can't call for help. I would recommend Garmin makes a few communicators. Spot makes one that's pretty nice. On the list, just didn't buy it for this trip. I spent way more money than I really wanted to get ready for it, and so there were certain things that made it, certain things that didn't. And then touching on the terrain in Utah, it does turn into rock. I mean, it's rock. There is not a lot of dirt on that side of things. So if water is an issue, once you get the Buckeye on, no problems. You're good to go from there. And that was honestly probably my favorite part of the trail, would be from Buckeye Reservoir on. It turns in a little bit more technical, still super, super easy. I mean, this whole trail is super easy, but it's a little more technical, so it kind of makes you pay attention, a little more kind of fun, and you don't have to worry about the clay if it starts to rain. But you do have to watch out for people on that side. Yes. We ran into quite a few people coming up from Moab, and then coming in. So, yeah, just a few things to watch on the Utah side of things. And I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up on here in the comments, message me directly, whatever you need. I want to help as many people as I can with this, because I felt like I did a lot of research and was still slightly unprepared for what we ran into a few times. And that's the main thing that nobody touched on. They didn't touch on the weather. They didn't touch on the type of dirt that's up there, the problems you could run into if the weather changed. And so, just in a quick recap, that was the main point I want to get across. If it's crappy weather, don't go. Just don't go. It's not worth it. There's cutouts and different routes you could take to avoid the area that we ran into. Would definitely recommend that. If you get stuck in the rain up there, don't go through there. And it's a pretty obvious when it starts to change, because it'll go from just kind of like a wet road to all of a sudden you're in clay, muddy, needing 4-wheel drive. If you run into that, just pull over for the night. Definitely give yourself 3 days to do the trail. You can do it in 2, but I felt like doing it in 3 was the best option. We still had to end up we did like 30 miles one day, but we took most of the day just driving down to Montrose from the Pinedale area, Vernal. We spent the one night in Vernal, so we got a little bit of a head start on the highway stuff. But yeah, definitely I would say take 3 days. 30 miles the first day, 70 miles the second, and then it ended up being about 50. We ditched out a little early on the trail. A lot of the reviewers have said that from the time you kind of contact the highway on the Moab side, it's just mostly like a frontage road and then kind of back behind some housing stuff. So we just ditched out. There was flash flood warnings and bad weather all over the place. So we just said, you know what, that part of the trail is not supposed to be that awesome. We're just done with it. So we just ditched out, but we only missed out on 5-10 miles of trail, so it wasn't too bad. But all in all, really fun trail. Definitely recommend it. Just be prepared for anything that can happen out there.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for coming along for the ride. Video got a little long, but it's all information that I feel like I needed to get out there. So thanks, and we'll hope to see you on the next one.
Thanks for watching.